Have you ever watched your own mother pretend you don't exist, in front of your entire family? I have. I was 11 years old, standing in her dining room on Thanksgiving, holding a composition notebook filled with every terrible thing she'd done to me that summer. And when I started reading out loud, the room went so quiet you could hear the candles flickering on the table. My mother's face drained. Not slowly, all at once, like someone pulled a plug. 40 years of pretending, of smiling, of performing the role of perfect mother, perfect wife, perfect woman, gone in the time it took me to read the first page. She looked at me the way you look at someone who's just set your house on fire. But I didn't stop reading. That Thanksgiving changed everything. It cost me a mother. It almost cost me a family. But it gave me something I'd never had before, the truth, spoken out loud, in a room full of people who could no longer pretend they didn't hear it. My name is Maggie Colton. I'm 31 years old now. And to understand what happened at that dinner table, I need to take you back to the summer I turned 11, and the 2 weeks my mother erased me from the family. It started with something she said to me in the car. 6 words I will never forget. The Coltons of Savannah, Georgia were, by all appearances, a beautiful family. My mother, Joanne, made sure of that. She was PTA president 3 years running. She organized the neighborhood block party every 4th of July. She brought casseroles when someone got sick and flowers when someone died. If you met her at church or at a school event, you'd think she was the warmest woman alive. And she was, to everyone except me. My father, Dennis, was a quiet man. Worked at a logistics company, came home at 6, sat in his recliner. He wasn't mean. He wasn't anything, really. He existed in my mother's orbit the way a moon exists around a planet, just following whatever gravitational pull she created. When she made a decision, he nodded. When she raised her voice, he left the room. I can count on one hand the number of times my father disagreed with my mother about anything. He never disagreed about me. I had 2 older siblings. Travis, 16, was the golden child. Quarterback, honor roll, the son my mother paraded at every opportunity. And Lydia, 14, was the quiet one, not quiet like me, but strategically quiet. She'd learned early that if she agreed with Mom and stayed out of the way, life was easier. Smart girl. I didn't figure that out until much later. Then there was me. Maggie. The difficult one. I wasn't difficult. I just asked questions. Why can't I go? How come Travis gets to but I don't? Why did you tell Mrs. Brennan I was sick when I wasn't? Questions my mother treated like grenades. But there was one person in my family who never made me feel like a problem. My grandmother, Eleanor Colton. My father's mother. She lived alone in a farmhouse about 40 minutes outside Savannah, white clapboard, wraparound porch, a kitchen that always smelled like cinnamon and coffee. Grandma Eleanor used to say something about my mother that I didn't understand until years later. She'd look at me with those sharp blue eyes, hand me a glass of sweet tea, and say, "Your mama doesn't hate you, Maggie. She just hates anyone who sees through her." I was 8 when she told me that. I didn't know what it meant. By the time I was 11, I understood completely. Eleanor died 6 months before the summer everything happened. Heart attack, quick, in her sleep. The farmhouse sat empty after that, 40 minutes down a county road, surrounded by nothing but pine trees and silence. No one talked about what to do with it. My mother talked about everything else, the church fundraiser, Travis's football camp, the annual family trip to Lake Hartwell, but never the farmhouse. Never Eleanor. It was June when my mother made the announcement. She was standing in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with her phone in one hand and a glass of white wine in the other. Lake Hartwell. 2 weeks. We leave Saturday. She looked around the room at my father, at Travis, at Lydia. Everyone packed light. I already booked the house. I waited for her to look at me. She didn't. "Mom," I said. "What about me?" She took a sip of wine. Didn't rush. Didn't even glance my way. I signed you up for that church day camp, Maggie. Pastor Glenn's program. You'll love it. I don't want to go to day camp. I want to come to the lake. Now she looked at me. That look, the one that said I'd just made her life harder by existing. Maggie, don't start. The house only has 3 bedrooms. It's not practical. Travis was already on his phone, not listening. Lydia stared at her plate. Dad opened his mouth, then closed it. Classic Dennis Colton. That night, I pressed my ear against my parents' bedroom door. Mom was on the phone. I could hear her laughing. Oh, it'll be wonderful. Just the 4 of us. Honestly, Linda, it'll be so nice to finally have a real family vacation without the drama. Without the drama. That was me. I was the drama. But there was no church camp. And where she actually took me was so much worse. Saturday morning. The SUV was packed. Coolers, suitcases, Travis's football, Lydia's book bag. The whole family loaded up like a catalog photo, except me. Get in my car, Mom said, not looking up from her phone. She pointed at her silver sedan in the driveway. Where are we going? I told you. Camp. She didn't say another word for the entire 40-minute drive. I watched the strip malls thin out, then the neighborhoods, then the trees took over, long stretches of pine lining a 2-lane road I recognized but didn't want to. We pulled into Grandma Eleanor's driveway. The farmhouse looked the same. White paint peeling a little more than before. The porch swing still. The garden Eleanor kept was overgrown, weeds pushing through where tomatoes used to be. The windows were dark. Mom. This isn't camp. She popped the trunk and pulled out 2 plastic grocery bags and a sleeping bag. Walked them up the porch steps, unlocked the front door with a key I didn't know she had, and set everything on the kitchen counter. I followed her inside. The house smelled stale, like dust and old wood and something faintly sweet that might have been the ghost of Eleanor's cinnamon rolls. Mom put $30 on the counter next to the grocery bags. Then she looked at me. Not with anger. Not even with coldness. With nothing. Like she was dropping off a package. You're old enough. Don't embarrass me. 6 words. The same 6 from the cold open. I can still hear the exact way she said them, flat, efficient, already thinking about the lake house. Mom, please. I don't want to stay here alone. It's 2 weeks, Maggie. Eleanor managed fine out here by herself for 30 years. She checked her phone. I need to get on the road. Travis has a lake volleyball tournament tomorrow. What if something happens? Like what? She looked at me, almost amused. You have food. You have a roof. There's a gas station a mile up the road if you need something. Don't be dramatic. Can I at least call you? The house phone's disconnected. Eleanor canceled it. She said this like it was an interesting fact, not a problem. If it's a real emergency, walk to the gas station. They have a pay phone. She picked up her purse, walked to the door, and stopped. For 1 second I thought she was going to turn around. Going to say she was sorry, that this was a bad idea, that of course I could come to the lake. Lock the door behind me. And she was gone. I stood on the porch and watched the silver sedan back out of the driveway, pull onto the county road, and disappear behind the pines. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. I went back inside. Opened the grocery bags. 2 loaves of white bread. A jar of peanut butter. A 6-pack of ramen. A bag of apples, 5 apples, I counted. 2 cans of chicken noodle soup. A gallon of water. I did the math the way only a hungry kid does. 14 days. Maybe if I ate half portions, I could stretch it. Maybe. The refrigerator worked, but barely. It hummed and rattled like it was coughing. The freezer didn't freeze. I put the apples inside anyway, hoping the cool would keep them from going soft. That first night, I lay in Grandma Eleanor's bed, the old quilt pulled up to my chin, the mattress dipping in the middle where she'd slept for decades. The house creaked. Wind moved through the pines outside like breathing. I stared at the ceiling until my eyes adjusted to the dark, and then I stared some more. The next morning, I found the composition notebook. It was sitting in the top drawer of Eleanor's writing desk in the front room, a black and white marbled notebook, the kind they sell at drugstores. The first few pages had Eleanor's handwriting. Grocery lists, phone numbers, a recipe for peach cobbler. The rest was blank. I sat down at her desk, opened to a clean page, and wrote the date. June 14th. Then I wrote, Day 1. Mom left me at Grandma's house. She gave me $30 and food for maybe a week. Nobody knows I'm here. I didn't know why I started writing. Maybe because Eleanor had always told me to write things down. Paper doesn't forget, Maggie, she used to say. People do. Paper doesn't. So I wrote. Every day. What I ate. What I didn't eat. How I felt, though I tried to keep that short because feelings didn't change the math. The math was simple, the food was running out, and no one was coming. Day 3, I tried calling my father. I walked the mile to the gas station in 90-degree heat, fed quarters into the pay phone, and dialed his cell. He picked up on the 4th ring. I could hear water in the background, laughter, Travis yelling something. Maggie? He sounded surprised, like he'd forgotten I existed. Dad, I'm at Grandma's house. Mom left me here. I don't have enough food. Long pause. The laughter in the background got louder. Someone cannonballed into the lake. Your mother knows what's best, Maggie. Dad, please. Can you come get me? Another pause. Longer this time. I heard my mother's voice, distant but sharp. Dennis, who is that? Just, be good, okay, he said. And hung up. I stood at that pay phone for a long time after, receiver still in my hand, the dial tone buzzing against my ear. That was the moment I understood something I'd been circling for years. My father wasn't upset because he didn't know what was happening. He knew. He always knew. He just chose her. Every single time. I walked back to the farmhouse. Opened the notebook. Wrote, Day 3. Called Dad. He told me to be good. Mom was in the background. He hung up. That night I checked my mother's Facebook on Eleanor's old desktop computer, the one slow machine still connected to the internet through a phone line that somehow worked even though the actual phone didn't. New post from Joanne Colton. The whole family on the lake house dock, golden hour light, everyone smiling. Travis flexing with a fish he'd caught. Lydia in sunglasses. Dad holding a beer. Caption, nothing matters more than family time. Blessed beyond measure. Heart emoji. Sun emoji. 37 likes. 12 comments. You guys are goals. What a beautiful family. So blessed, Joanne. I counted the people in the photo. 4. There were supposed to be 5 Coltons. No one in the comments noticed. I wrote it in the notebook. Day 3. Mom posted a family photo at the lake. I'm not in it. No one asked where I am. By day 5, I'd eaten through the bread and half the peanut butter. The apples were going soft in the broken fridge. I had 4 packs of ramen and 2 cans of soup left, and 9 more days to go. That's when someone knocked on the door, someone I didn't expect. I almost didn't answer. My mother's voice was in my head, don't embarrass me, don't bother anyone, and opening the door to a stranger felt like both. But the knock came again. Patient. Not urgent. I cracked the door. A man stood on the porch. Tall, weathered, wearing a faded Atlanta Braves cap and work boots. He looked about 70, maybe older. Well now, he said, squinting at me. You're not Eleanor. Eleanor was my grandmother. She passed away. I know she did, sweetheart. I'm Dale. Dale Womack. I live about a quarter mile that way. He pointed down the road. I delivered Eleanor's mail for 22 years before I retired. Saw lights on last couple nights. Figured I should check. He looked past me into the dim house. His eyes moved the way observant people's do, quick, cataloging. The empty grocery bags on the counter. The ramen wrappers in the trash. Me, in the same clothes I'd been wearing for 3 days. Your folks here? My mom's coming back tonight, I said. Dale looked at me for a long beat. He didn't call me a liar, but his face said he knew. All right. Well, I made too much chili last night. Hate to throw it out. You want some? He was lying. The same way Mr. Harold lied in stories, the same way kind old men always lie when a kid is hungry, they pretend it's about them, not about you. Okay, I said. He came back 20 minutes later with a pot of chili, a sleeve of crackers, and a 2-liter of sweet tea. Sat on the porch while I ate at the kitchen table. Didn't come inside, didn't push, didn't ask more questions. Just sat there in the porch swing, one boot on the railing, like he had nowhere else to be. He came back the next day. Brought biscuits and a jar of fig preserves. The day after that, a plate of fried chicken wrapped in foil. On the third day, I told him the truth. All of it. The lake house trip. The grocery bags. The $30. The disconnected phone. My mother's 6 words. My father's silence. Dale sat in the porch swing and listened without interrupting. When I finished, he took off his Braves cap, ran a hand over his head, and put it back on. That's all he did for about 30 seconds. How much food you got left? He asked. 2 cans of soup. Some ramen. And your mama's coming back when? 9 more days. He nodded slowly. All right. I'm going to bring you food every day. And I'm not going to call anyone, yet. But Maggie, I need you to keep writing in that notebook. Dates, meals, everything. You understand? Why? Because paper doesn't lie. And someday you might need someone to believe you. The same thing Eleanor used to say. Paper doesn't forget. I nodded. Dale kept his word. Every day, a meal appeared on the porch by noon. Sometimes he stayed and talked. Mostly about Eleanor, how she used to chase the mail truck down the driveway if he was late, how she made the best peach cobbler in the county, how she talked about me all the time. That girl's the only honest one in the bunch, he said Eleanor told him once. She's going to have a hard life because of it. On day 9, I found something I wasn't supposed to find. I was sitting at Eleanor's desk, writing in the notebook, when my pen rolled off the edge and dropped behind the desk. I reached down to grab it and my hand hit the side of a drawer I hadn't noticed, a narrow one built into the underside of the desktop, almost invisible unless you were on the floor looking up. It was locked. A small brass lock, the kind you'd see on a diary. I pulled every drawer in the desk open, looking for a key. Found it taped to the underside of the center drawer, a tiny brass key wrapped in a piece of masking tape with Eleanor's handwriting, for Maggie. When it's time. My hands were shaking when I turned it. Inside the drawer, a sealed envelope addressed to me in Eleanor's handwriting, and a thick document held together with a binder clip, pages of legal text with a notary stamp on the last page. I opened the envelope first. The letter was 2 pages long. Eleanor's handwriting, the same handwriting from the grocery lists and the peach cobbler recipe, but steadier, more deliberate, like she'd taken her time. Dear Maggie, it started. If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and I'm sorry I couldn't say this to your face. I was a coward about a lot of things in my life, but I'm trying not to be a coward about this. She wrote that she knew how my mother treated me. She'd seen it for years, the exclusion, the coldness, the way Joanne made me invisible. She wrote that she'd confronted my father once, years ago, and he'd said Joanne was just strict, and that I was too sensitive. Eleanor didn't buy it. Your mama is not a bad woman in the way people think of bad, she wrote. She's bad in the quiet way. The way that doesn't leave bruises. The way people don't believe because there's nothing to photograph. But I believe you, Maggie. I've always believed you. Then the last paragraph, the farmhouse is yours. Not your daddy's. Not your mama's. Yours. I changed my will 6 months ago to make sure of it. It's held in trust until you're 18, and no one, not your mother, not anyone, can sell it or take it from you. You will always have a place that belongs to you. Love, Grandma Eleanor. I read it 3 times. Then I picked up the legal document. I didn't understand most of the language, but I understood enough. Last will and testament of Eleanor Ruth Colton. Revised. The farmhouse, the land, the house, everything, left to Margaret and Colton, held in trust. I showed Dale that afternoon. He read the letter, then the will. He was quiet for a long time. Your grandma was smarter than all of them, he said. Then something clicked. The voicemail. I'd been hitting play on the answering machine all week, listening to Eleanor's old messages just to hear the voices of people who'd called her, just to feel less alone. But there was one message I'd skipped past because it was recent, recorded after Eleanor died, left by someone who didn't know the machine was still running. I hit play. My mother's voice filled the kitchen. Crisp, businesslike, clearly leaving a message she thought was going to a real estate agent's office line. Hi, this is Joanne Colton. I'm calling about the property on County Road 14. My husband inherited it from his mother and we'd like to get it listed as soon as possible. I want it sold before anyone in the family starts asking questions. My husband will sign whatever I put in front of him. Call me back. Dale and I looked at each other. My mother didn't know about the new will. She was still operating under the old one, the one that left everything to my father, which meant, in her mind, everything to her. She was planning to sell my grandmother's house out from under me. The one place in the world that had ever felt like mine. She didn't just leave me here to get rid of me for 2 weeks. She was erasing Eleanor from our lives. The farmhouse, the memories, the woman who saw through her. I picked up the notebook and wrote, Day 9. Found Grandma's letter and her new will. The farmhouse is mine. Mom doesn't know. She's trying to sell it. She thinks Dad inherited it. Then I closed the notebook and looked at Dale. What do I do? He leaned back in the porch swing. Well, he said slowly. The way I see it, you've got the truth on paper. The question is when and where you want people to hear it. I didn't know the answer yet. But I knew the moment would come. And it came 2 months later, at a table surrounded by every person my mother had ever tried to impress. The 2 weeks ended on a Saturday. My mother pulled into the driveway at exactly 4 p.m., sunburned and smiling. She walked inside, glanced around the farmhouse like she was inspecting a rental property, and said, See? You're fine. Let's go. No hug. No how are you? No acknowledgement that her 11-year-old daughter had just survived 2 weeks alone in a dead woman's house on $30 and the kindness of a stranger. I got in the car. I brought the composition notebook, tucked inside my sleeping bag. She didn't notice. On the drive home, she talked about the lake. How Travis caught a 7-pound bass. How Lydia got a tan. How the sunset on the last night was absolutely divine. She talked for 40 minutes straight without asking me a single question. When we got home, Travis was on the couch playing video games. Lydia was in her room. Dad was in his recliner, watching baseball. Nobody looked up. Nobody said welcome back. Nobody asked how 2 weeks alone at the farmhouse had been. I walked upstairs, put the notebook in my bottom dresser drawer, and lay on my bed. My own bed, in my own room, and somehow I felt more alone than I had at the farmhouse. The next morning, I heard my mother on the phone in the kitchen. Same real estate voice from the voicemail. Yes, the property on County Road 14. I want to list it by October. My husband's the executor, he'll handle the paperwork. Pause. No family disputes. Everyone's on the same page. Everyone was not on the same page. My mother just didn't know it yet. I had the notebook. I had the will. I had Dale as a witness. I had the voicemail she didn't know existed. And I had something my mother never expected me to have, patience. I waited 2 months. Not because I was scared. Because Grandma Eleanor once told me something else I'd written down years ago. Maggie, if you're ever going to tell the truth about someone, make sure you do it in a room full of people who've been believing their lies. Thanksgiving was 8 weeks away. My mother was already planning the menu. And I was planning something else entirely. Quick pause here. This channel collects real stories from forums and real people, and we break down the psychology behind why people behave the way they do. Why mothers choose image over their own children. Why fathers stay silent when they know the truth. If you want to understand the why behind families like mine, subscribe and stay for the end. Because what happened at that Thanksgiving table, even now, 20 years later, I still can't believe I actually did it. Thanksgiving morning. My mother's house smelled like roasted turkey and cinnamon candles. She'd been cooking since 5 a.m. The dining table was set for 18, her best china, cloth napkins folded into fans, a centerpiece she'd spent 2 days arranging. Joanne Colton didn't cook Thanksgiving dinner. She produced it. The guests arrived in waves. Uncle Richard and his wife. Aunt Caroline, Eleanor's younger sister, drove up from Beaufort. Cousins, neighbors, 2 couples from church. My mother floated between them in a burgundy dress, refilling wine glasses, laughing, touching arms. Performance mode. I sat in the corner of the living room, invisible as always. The composition notebook was in the waistband of my skirt, pressed flat against my back. Before dinner, I slipped into the kitchen for water. Aunt Caroline was there, washing her hands. My mother stood at the counter, carving turkey. I heard her say, casual as weather, "Oh, Caroline, I meant to tell you. We're listing Mother Colton's farmhouse next month. Dennis and I agreed it's too much upkeep. Better to let it go." Caroline's hands stilled under the faucet. "Eleanor loved that place, Joanne." "I know, but it's just sitting there rotting. Sentimental value doesn't pay property taxes." She laughed, that light, dismissive laugh she used to close conversations. Caroline said nothing. But I saw her jaw tighten. I went back to the living room. My heart was hammering. Not from nerves. From certainty. Dinner was served at 5. 18 people around the table. Turkey, sweet potatoes, green bean casserole, cornbread, the full production. My mother sat at the head, glowing, surveying her kingdom. After dessert, she stood and tapped her glass. The room hushed. Her annual gratitude toast, a Joanne Colton tradition. "I just want to say how thankful I am for this beautiful family. This year has had its challenges, but looking around this table, I know how blessed we are. Every single one of." Actually. I pushed my chair back and stood. I'd like to say something. The room shifted. 18 heads turned toward me. My mother's smile froze, then tightened. "Maggie, honey. Sit down. This isn't the time." No. One word. But it landed like a door slamming. Travis looked up from his phone for the first time all night. Lydia's eyes went wide. My father stared at his plate. I pulled the notebook from behind my back and opened it to the first page. June 14th, I read. Day 1. Mom drove me to Grandma Eleanor's farmhouse and left me there. She gave me 2 bags of groceries and $30. She told me she signed me up for church camp, but there is no church camp. The rest of the family went to Lake Hartwell without me. Maggie. Mom's voice was sharp now, the warmth gone. Put that away. I kept reading. June 16th, day 3. Called Dad from the pay phone at the gas station. He said Mom knows what's best and hung up. I have bread, peanut butter, and 4 packs of ramen left for 11 more days. A murmur moved through the table. Uncle Richard set down his fork. June 19th, day 6. A neighbor named Dale Womack found me alone at the farmhouse. He's been bringing me food. Without him I would have had nothing to eat for 8 more days. She's exaggerating. Mom's voice cracked through the room. She was smiling, but the smile was wrong, too sharp, too tight. Maggie's always been dramatic. You know how she is. There was a camp program, she just. June 22nd. I didn't stop. Day 9. Found a hidden drawer in Grandma Eleanor's desk. Inside was a letter addressed to me and a new will. The room went dead silent. Aunt Caroline's hand went to her mouth. I pulled the letter from between the notebook pages. Eleanor's handwriting, clear and steady. Dear Maggie. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. I know how your mama treats you when no one's looking. I've seen it for years and I've held my tongue too long. I looked up at my mother. Her face had lost all color. The farmhouse is yours. Not your daddy's. Not your mama's. Yours. I changed my will 6 months ago. No one can sell it or take it from you. You will always have a place that belongs to you. I set the letter on the table. Grandma Eleanor left the farmhouse to me. In trust. Notarized, legal, filed with her attorney. I looked directly at my mother. You've been trying to sell a house that was never yours. Travis leaned forward. Maggie, come on. You're embarrassing Mom. It's Thanksgiving. Aunt Caroline stood up. Travis. Sit down and let the girl finish. She turned to my mother. Her voice was low, shaking. Joanne, is this true? You left this child alone at that farmhouse for 2 weeks? My mother's eyes darted around the table, searching for an ally, a sympathetic face, someone who'd back her up. She found nothing. She's making it sound worse than it was. I checked on her. I called. There's no phone at the farmhouse, I said. You know that. You told me yourself the line was disconnected. And then Aunt Caroline said something that broke the room wide open. I knew something was wrong. Caroline's voice was thick. Every summer, this child came back thinner. Every holiday, she sat in the corner while you paraded your other 2 around like show ponies. I told myself it was none of my business. Eleanor told me I was wrong. She looked at my mother. My sister changed her will because she didn't trust you with her own granddaughter. And she was right. She turned to my father. Dennis. You knew. You always knew. Your own mother saw it. That's why she cut you out. Dad's face crumpled. He didn't lift his head. I thought if I kept the peace, it would get better. Kept the peace. Caroline's voice broke. You kept your comfort. There's a difference, Dennis. My mother made one last attempt. She straightened, wiped her eyes, and pointed at me. If you don't stop this right now, Maggie, you will never be part of this family again. I looked at her, this woman in her burgundy dress, standing at the head of her perfect table, in her perfect house, with her perfect china and her folded napkins and her centerpiece, and I said the truest thing I'd ever said. I haven't been part of this family in years, Mom. You made sure of that. Uncle Richard, a lawyer, cleared his throat. Maggie, I'd like to see that will when dinner's over. I'll make sure the trust is handled properly. Dale Womack stood in the kitchen doorway. Caroline had called him after I told her about him earlier that week. I'd given her his number the day before, knowing this moment was coming. Dale confirmed everything. The dates. The food he brought. The condition he found me in. My mother stood alone at the head of her Thanksgiving table. 18 people. Not one of them on her side. She grabbed her coat from the back of her chair, walked through the room without a word, and went out the front door. Nobody followed her. That was the last Thanksgiving I ever spent in my mother's house. But it wasn't the end of the story. After that night, things moved fast. Aunt Caroline filed for temporary guardianship within a week. The court granted it in January. I moved into her house in Beaufort, smaller than my parents' place, no perfect lawn, no china cabinet. Just a guest room she'd painted lavender because I once told her it was my favorite color. She remembered. My own mother never knew. My parents divorced the following spring. Not because of me, because of everything I'd uncovered. The farmhouse scheme, the lies, the will. Dad couldn't pretend anymore, and Mom couldn't forgive him for stopping. Dennis reached out a year later. A short letter, not making excuses. I failed you. I knew it then and I know it now. I'd like to try, if you'll let me. We have a relationship now, careful, imperfect, built on honesty instead of silence. He comes to the farmhouse sometimes. We sit on the porch and drink sweet tea and don't talk about Mom. It's enough. Travis sided with Joanne. He still does. Some people choose the parent who performs love over the one who proves it. Lydia surprised me. She called on my 15th birthday, crying, and said, "I'm sorry I never said anything. I was scared she'd do it to me too." We're close now. And Joanne. We haven't spoken in 20 years. She never admitted fault. Never acknowledged the farmhouse, the 2 weeks, any of it. Last I heard, she's living in Florida. She has a new Facebook profile. The photos look beautiful. Now, looking back at 31, I understand something about my mother I couldn't have understood at 11. People like Joanne build their entire identity around how others see them. The Instagram posts, the dinner parties, the PDA smile, that wasn't decoration. That was her. Strip it away and there was nothing underneath. So when I stood at that table and read the notebook, I wasn't embarrassing her. I was threatening her survival. That's why she never reacted to my hunger with concern, she reacted with fury. I wasn't a child who was suffering. I was a crack in the image. The danger was never that I was hurting. The danger was that someone might find out. And here's the other thing I've learned, the thing I wish someone had told me at 11. Kids in families like mine don't stay quiet because they're weak. They stay quiet because they've been taught that love is the reward for silence. I kept my mouth shut for years, not because I didn't know something was wrong, but because I believed that speaking up meant losing the only family I had. Grandma Eleanor's letter broke that belief. It was proof that someone could love me and tell the truth at the same time. Real love doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't ask you to starve. It just shows up. I live in the farmhouse now. I've restored it over the years, new paint, new porch railing, a garden where Eleanor's used to be. Tomatoes grow there again. The desk is still in the front room. The hidden drawer is empty now. I don't need it to hold secrets anymore. But the composition notebook is still in there. Right where the will used to be. Some things you keep. Not because you need the evidence, but because that 11-year-old girl deserves to be believed forever. All stories on this channel are collected from real forums and modified for privacy. If you've ever been the difficult one in your family, the one who asked questions, the one who didn't clap on cue, I want you to know something. You weren't difficult. You were honest. And the people who punished you for it were never protecting the family. They were protecting themselves. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe. Check the description for the next video. And remember, the truth doesn't need permission.